Hey, so this clip is going to detail the evolutionary theory of depression, and I'm speaking about this because I think, well, one, it's quite compelling, and two, I think if you're going through something like depression, it's really nice to have a mechanistic understanding behind what could be potentially going on. So, the hypothesis goes that before we were living in the urban settings that we are now, like cities, and we were living a more traditional hunter gatherer kind of a lifestyle, the biggest threat that we faced was microbial invasion or infection. And so, really, when we're exposed to pathogens like bacteria and viruses, we have an immune response. So, in essence, we have inflammation. And the body learnt to display this thing called sickness behavior when it sensed inflammation within the body, and that was to increase the likelihood of survival. So this sickness behavior includes things like eating less, sleeping more, losing interest in the environment, losing libido. These are all behaviors that conserve energy so that the energy can be channeled into fighting an infection. Also, there's things like fever, because if you make the body hotter, there's microbes that can't survive in that environment. So there's all of these strategies the body's used to employ to fight infection. Now, the really intriguing thing is if you overlap a lot of the symptoms that you have when you are sick with depression, there's so much similarity. So, we've known for a long time that depressed people as a trend have higher body temperatures. Their thermostat is raised. Sort of mimicking a low-level fever. A lot of the time there is loss of interest, there's loss of libido. Although people can have insomnia with depression, they can also sleep a lot more. Obviously, there's some differences, and with depression, you're more likely to have feelings of worthlessness and guilt, and more likely to commit suicide. So it's obviously they're not mirror reflections of each other, but it is very interesting. And really, so the rest of the story is we're now exposed to so many things that incite inflammation. So inflammatory diets, medications. So these are things like non-steroidal anti-inflammatories, the pill, protein pump inhibitors. There's a lot of medications that cause inflammation in the gut, environmental toxins, mineral deficiencies. There's so many things, stress, chronic stress. So we're exposed to all of these sources of inflammation, and is it potentially possible that our body is interpreting that as we're being exposed to some sort of chronic infection? So yeah, and I guess we don't all experience depression because there's individual variability in the inflammatory patterns that we produce and how sensitive we are to that inflammation and things like that. So yeah, is it possible that our bodies are just confused by this inflammatory environment that we're living in, and it's reproducing the sickness behavior? It's an interesting hypothesis, and I hope you enjoyed it and it makes sense to you. Ciao.